Welcome to this week's episode of Fellowship in Essential Oils. Today we're looking at an oil that is gifted from a little insignificant seed with a long history and lots of stories. And we can't wait to share those stories with you today. That's right, we're talking about cumin essential oil. Joining me today, as per usual, is Liz. How are you today, Liz?
I'm very well, thank you, Adam. I have to say, though, these stories, I don't know how many I've got to share because when you look at in English texts, quite often cumin is confused with caraway. And we did caraway last week. so, so it's going to be interesting to see how we unpick those threads.
Yeah. Well, one little story I was just reading that someone that in the past it was referred to that if you were stingy or tight-fisted, that you had eaten cumin, as the idea that maybe that cumin had been used as a form of taxes or payment in the past. So that was a bit of a novel bit of interest that I found about the herb.
That That's interesting because actually, some of the myths that I found about it were that it helps you hold on tight to things. Hold on tight to your chickens so they don't stray. Hold on tight to your lover so they don't stray. So holding on tight to your money, it's like you can see how that happened. Interesting.
Yeah, very much so. Now, let's dive in first of all on how it's used physically. This would definitely fit in the digestive oils category, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I have to say it's one of those oils that I learnt about 30 years ago, did my one lesson and have never studied it again. But yeah, digestive is definitely up there. And one of the primary constituents in it is cumin aldehyde. I think I said that right. And it's about 60% of the oil. And that's been researched a lot, and that's going to be probably become a drug over time. So it performs really well for issues with diabetes, although the information is quite conflicting at the moment. I'll talk about that in a minute. But also, it's been found to potentially be able to kill melanoma in a petri dish, so it's likely to become a cancer medicine. But to kind of just do my usual disclaimer, remember those kind of tests are done in a petri dish. They're not human blood. Human blood's very good at screwing over all of those tests. And it's certainly not a good decision to say, I'm not going to have my cancer treatment. I'm going to use cumin oil. Bad plan. So I'm going to, to put that out there, first of all. But the diabetes is really interesting because, again, we're talking about, I think it was an alcoholic extract rather than an essential oil. And it was injected into peritoneal, into a rodent. So many different ways that this is not the same as topical aromatherapy, but it's interesting to think about the results of it. And almost all of the diabetes markers, HB1AC, HB1B, also the triglycerides, which are the fatty cells that cause the problem, all fell when the rat was treated, I think, for 8 weeks, sorry, with cuminaldehyde. But it didn't affect its insulin. And that's exactly what you would have expected it to have affected to make those changes in the body. Hence why it hasn't yet been made into a drug, because now they're trying to understand, well, how did it do that without affecting insulin? Because potentially that tells us more about diabetes than we knew before. So that's really interesting to think about it from that point of view, but also has a profound effect on appetite. And I've got a sort of a personal story that makes me very fond of cumin. That very close to the end of his life, my dad had bowel cancer and was having chemotherapy and had no appetite and was just getting thinner and thinner. And every day we weren't really talking about anything except was what was wrong with dad, because it was just like consuming everybody. And he decided that he'd been a golfer all his life, and he loved his golf. So he decided he wanted to go for one last look at the golf course to see his like society. And they wheeled him along. He was not eating. He was very frail. He hadn't eaten for days, and everyone was very worried about it. And the lady was making carrot and cumin soup. And he went in and he said, I just wanted to eat. And it was the first time I'd eaten properly in weeks. And he said, and I've never really eaten cumin, Liz. He said, but I just thought it was absolutely lovely. And I do remember the feeling, oh gosh, carrot and cumin soup. I would never even thought of making it, but it was so nourishing for him. So yeah, that's very good for appetite. Even just smelling it coming from the kitchen, it really switched his appetite on. So for somebody who's having cancer treatment, that's like a good tip to get it boiling, because the smell encourages it. Very good antioxidant, very good antifungal against candida. So there was an interesting clinical trial where they did like a wash with cumin water. So that must have been like a tea, I think, or maybe a distillation where the hydrolat was used. Do not do this with the essential oil. You will really know about it. But washing when the lady got thrush down below, and it was really not only killed the thrush, but also stopped it coming back. Because if somebody's prone to thrush, you'll know that you have like this cycle of like antifungals, and then you have a urinary infection, and then so you have your antibiotics, and then the thrush come back again as this cycle, although less so now because they don't hand out antibiotics so much. But just this wash with cumin, and so maybe like diluting it into a carrier oil very, very weakly might be good. We should talk about the dilution, because there is a mild risk of photosensitivity. And I have to say, I look at the chemistry and I can't tell you why that is. But we only use very, very small dilutions of cumin oil, 0.4%. So the easy way to calculate that, and it's very, very rough, would be to say, right, well, you can't actually get 1 drop into a teaspoon of carrier. So I would say, right, use a tablespoon of carrier, 1 drop, and then you're easily below the dilution. And just using that much is fantastic for sort of fungal infections. So like athlete's foot, as I say, candida, thrush, malassezia, if you've got sort of fungal infections in the scalp, molluscum, all of those things really respond well to cumin. And I've talked about how cumin aldehyde is one of the constituents. If you've learned aromatherapy like from a functional chemistry point of view, aldehydes are very relaxing, very soothing, and really lovely sort of comforting constituents. And uplifting. So that relaxing and uplifting dynamic is really useful. So there's so many different ways that you can use it. And it's very good for skincare as well, particularly if you have got like quite mature skin. It has got a slightly astringent quality to it. So if you sort of get prone to spots, breakouts, that kind of thing. But as you get older, perhaps you might be, particularly when people go through the menopause, my skin changed an awful lot, and cumin was one of the oils that I used just to kind of settle it down into normality again. I love cumin.
Yeah, interesting. I'd love to ask you, for me, the smell is very, very distinct, and I must admit the idea of carrot and cumin soup, I'm actually going out for dinner after we finish recording this, so I don't think I'll have that on the menu, but I feel like that now. But I don't know if I'd want my body, like my skincare or anything, to smell like cumin. Would you?
So yeah, that is one of those things that you have to get good at blending with. And if you do spend some time with the oil, and I have to say, this bottle I've got here, I wanted to particularly find a very old bottle to compare with my fresh cumin to see if the scent of the aldehydes had gone and it affected the scent, and it doesn't really. And yeah, there's like a curry note to it. It's very green smelling, but if you pair it with things like on the rosy side of the scale with like geranium, rose, Parma Rosa, or those kind of more heady fragrances like jasmine, and actually hyacinth and cumin is lovely. So you kind of hiding that curry and bringing out the exotic side. It can be really beautiful, but it's like it's a project in its own right, really, to go through your box and go, well, what goes with that, to get clever with blending it, because it is useful.
I can definitely visualize that because there's a beautiful blend that I've worked with that's turmeric and a lot of those exotic flowers like rose and palmarosa and jasmine, things like that. And it kind of has that exotic kind of Indian kind of, I think I made a blend recently that I called Indian Nights, which was turmeric
Yeah.
and a lot of exotic flowers. So yeah, I think cumin would work in the same way.
And it's I was
On.
going to say it was very, very popular in sort of Rome and ancient Greece. You'll often find it in their recipes for Myron and Rodinon, those kind of really sort of sensuous blends that are heady and like heavy. It does need to be like a sheep or a heavy blend for it to work. You couldn't put it in something light.
Yeah, definitely. And just to kind of divert a little bit, one of the other historical reasons it's been used, or magical reasons it's been used for, is to make a man more attractive. Now, if a man came to me smelling like cumin, I think it'd be, it'd smell like he'd been in a kitchen. But I was thinking even, like one drop of this with many drops of something like sandalwood or one of the really strong wood oils could actually, you'd hide it. And remember, when we're working magically, it's not so much about, as long as you've got a touch of that oil in there, that magic comes straight in. It's a vibration of that. So I think like playing around with cumin and sandalwood, and I might even try that in the next few days, could be a really powerful one. It's got to smell nice. You want them to smell attractive, but magically that could be really good as well.
Yeah, and I think if you were to give like a keynote, a keyword to it, I would call it intriguing. And there is that kind of part of your brain that goes, what is that? Do you know what I mean? When you can't put your finger on what it is in a blend. So I can see how that would make a man more enticing, more interesting, because you're like, what is that? Yeah.
Mm. But coming back to the body, I find this is a really good one. We talked about caraway recently, and that's good for flatulence. I find this one, I would probably go for caraway before cumin, but can be great for that. And I have seen lots of references and used it for a bit of detoxification as well. So one of the ways especially with detoxification of using oils, is making a bit of a mix up and popping it on the soles of your feet. So it's soaking through the night and can kind of support the body in its natural detoxification, which is really, really important in this day and age when our toxic load is, kind of skyrocketing through the roof. So that can be another use for it as well.
Yeah, I think using it at night is good as well, because it is quite comforting. As I say, it is uplifting. So somebody who's suffering from long-term stress or from exhaustion, you know how like when you're in that kind of frenetic state, your sleep's not very good. Not only do you not sleep, but you have quite sort of fitful dreams. It has that sort of nature of kind of just soothing, calm down, and you drop down in relaxation really quite far. So it's good in massage. Again, you would only use the tiniest bit, or even maybe a homeopathic dose, not because you're worried about the dose, but as you say, because of the fragrance itself. But you can like feel the client go, oh. When they can't let go, it's a really good one. So yeah, on the soles of the feet at night, I think would be a really clever thing to do.
I might actually, I must admit that's not typically how I do use it, but I might give that a shot. I'm always interested in which oils, when applied to your feet, I normally do a couple of drops with some rose hand lotion that I have. And different ones will make me dream more vividly. And my latest discovery is clove, funnily enough, is increasing my dreams. But I've never tried cumin, so I'll have to check in with that and see how that one goes.
I think also what's probably happening is, and I don't know because nobody knows that much about dreams, but I've noticed that my dreams become more vivid if I'm hot. And
Yes.
and so the worst event I ever had with that was with having drunk hemp seed milk when I was doing the cannabis book. And I was like, I dreamt of like a fire demon. It was terrifying. It was really frightening. And it sort of alerted me to the fact that if you rise, or if I raise my temperature, I will dream more. And so that's maybe helpful for some people, but for me, I would find that less helpful because I'm prone to nightmares.
Yeah, yeah. Now, when it comes to the energy of this oil, I would definitely, if I had to create the most masculine trilogy or the most yang trilogy ever, I would put ginger, ginseng, and cumin in there. And for me, different oils, when I smell them, take me to different places around the world, not necessarily where the plant is native to, but kind of that aroma creates a landscape for me. And I find with cumin, it really, really connects me with that energy of the desert. The desert has that real strength and resilience, but also that dryness to it as well. I brought a bit of show and tell for anyone who's watching the video today. Forgive me if you're listening on the audio on Spotify or one of our other podcasting platforms, but there's these amazing crystals called tektites. Now, tektites are formed whenever a meteorite crashes into the earth, and it happens from time to time. And if they kind of are at such a heat that they dissolve, basically what they do is they fuse with the earth. And so this one is just a regular tektite. Sometimes it looks like alien poop. Doesn't look that attractive, but it's actually a natural glass. But there are some really interesting ones that have formed in different places around the world. And some people that know a little bit about crystals may have heard of one called Moldavite, which actually landed in the Czech Republic near the Moldau River. And actually, instead of turning black, for some mysterious reason, and they still don't really know why, turned this beautiful, like, bottle green color. And it's become rather famous on TikTok and other platforms, and now the price has skyrocketed. But there's another one that I absolutely love, and this is a extremely large piece compared to what you normally find. But this is called Libyan desert glass. So what this is a fusion between a meteorite crashing into the earth and melting the sand to this big natural silicon dioxide kind of globule. This is a really, it's kind of got the energy of a tiger. It's got that warrior energy, that strength that you would think about a desert. Like anything that goes into the desert just holds its own space. And then there's up to the other individual or those traveling through the desert, whether they have the strength to be able to tolerate that. And I think cumin is this amazing essential oil that would work with that kind of energy, like Libyan desert glass, like the desert, to help give you a real resilience. I find it works. It's got quite a solar energy, in my opinion, as well. And I feel that it's a really great one for actually helping you to stand on your own 2 feet, to feel free to take up your own space in the world, the space that you deserve. I think it's really great for helping you to shine. And also, if you've ever been in a situation, maybe the way you were raised or the structure of your family, there was some kind of guilt or shame around standing out, or being proud of who you are. And I think cumin in that way can really help you to stand on your, I guess, celebrate your own merits and your own qualities and not be ashamed of them and let your light shine in the world. So I think it's really beautiful for that.
I can't follow that. That was absolutely fascinating. I don't know. I'm going to watch it back again to get all the bits. I really want to. What was their first one called? Tektonite.
Oh, they're a family of crystals, or they're not really crystals, called tektites. So it's spelled TEK TITE, tektites, yeah.
What, I feel like it looks like coal, but it surely doesn't feel
No,
like
it is an actual form of glass, so it feels kind of glassy. It's a lot thicker than glass, obviously, and it would take a bit of effort to smash it, but it's actually a natural glass.
fascinating. And you're absolutely right. It has this very, very drying aspect to it. So it wouldn't be one because of the fragrance, really, as much as anything. I wouldn't really use it for drying out mucus on the chest and things like that, but you could, because it does have that drying aspect. And likewise, I didn't really mention it for how good it is for nourishing the skin in heat, but yeah, things we like mixing it with things like carrot and with patchouli, for example, really, really good in the heat. So yeah, fascinating. And I think you're quite right about standing out, because this fragrance does that. As I say, you do kind of go, I don't know what it is, but there's something different about you. Do you know what I mean? That's what you know. Yeah.
Very much so. I must admit, I was kind of skimming through some of my notes that I've collected over the years on cumin, and I found this really. I've copied and pasted it from somewhere, but I didn't get where I actually copied and pasted it from. But this reference was saying that it helps to balance. I've written it down. Balance between ambition, but non-attachment to success. which I think is a really empowering thing because we do live in a world where, you've got to be trying and you've got to be doing something and you need to be making an effort. But then there is that, oh, but what if I fail and all that type of thing. And I think Cumin, like we've been talking, does have this kind of a harmonizing energy about it. And it's like, well, give it a go, but it's almost about giving it a go is more important than being attached to the actual outcome in that way. And I think that could be really helpful in a whole range of different aspects of your life.
I've been fascinated really watching the mayhem on the great global scale this week. It being about minerals, amongst other things. And in my professional stress solution book, I talk about how what you need when you have been like long-term stressed, or if you start to feel depressed or demoralized, for example, you enter a more yin state. And what you need is yang energy to do that. And actually, we talk about there being yang essential oils, which I agree that they have a yang dimension, but all plant medicine is yin, really. Although, like in the book, I go like yin plus, yin minus. Then the more sort of plus it is, the more yang it is. You know what I mean? But obviously, the yang element is about drive and fire and determination and a male sort of aggressive energy. And it's fascinating to me that like there's minerals to be found in Ukraine, and then suddenly everyone's gone very aggressive thinking about it. And so when we're looking at oils that have that yang element, we do need to be careful of like the fire energy within our bodies too. So it's really useful to have that kind of energy if somebody is in a depleted and weakened state. But if they're already ambitious, if they're already motivated, if they're also already a go-getter, giving them more fire can really turn them to become not very nice.
Yeah.
So you would want to watch that. So if you were if somebody was already very driven, already sort of very motivated, you wouldn't want them to be having too many fire oils. So like cinnamon, cumin, ginger, cassia, all of those, you want to kind of calm them down a bit. These are more for medicines, if you like, medicines for people who are really yin, who are really depleted in energy and worn out.
But one of the interesting things I do find about cumin is, although it has this masculine energy about it, it may not be on people's, the top of the list when it comes to manifesting an abundance or prosperity. But this oil seems to have a characteristic to it that's really, really powerful for helping us make sure that whatever we manifest is for the greater good of all concerned, rather than that just gain of oneself, where sometimes we do kind of associate that hyper masculinity with that real aggressive, selfish, bullish kind of energy. Cumin, I guess, like it does in the body, is a bit of a harmonizer, can be used. And, again, when we're making an abundance blend, we'd probably use oils like orange or bergamot or Roman chamomile because it's golden color and different things like that. But I would actually suggest from time to time popping a drop of cumin in there to kind of just make sure that whatever you're wanting in your life and whatever you want to draw in, there's kind of this little caveat on there going, yeah, but it's got to be for the greatest good of all concerned, and making sure that you're not just pursuing things for satisfaction of the ego or just for self-gain, I guess.
Yeah, I think all of that is true. And I think that in terms of speaking to aromatherapists now, rather than just sort of people who are generally interested in essential oils, I think that is kind of a bit of a disease within our industry, that we're often sort of confronted with people saying, oh, I didn't think you'd charge me because I'm not very well. Do you know what I mean? And they always just a couple of drops of oil, And I think that there's also that part of a lot of aromatherapists who feel very uncomfortable about saying, well, that's what it costs me. That's what you're going to have to pay. And so, yeah, accumulating that kind of information in your sort of energetic field of there is worth in this, You are, that's not just a financial gain. You are doing good here. I think that's quite a really good medicine. And if you imagine that, if we go back 2,000 years and you think of those like caravans of camels with all of the spices, they definitely would have been charging for cumin then.
Very much so as well. And I would say, your point you're making to aromatherapists, from my experience, you can broaden that out to all different styles of healers, especially when they start off. That I'll talk to them and they're like, "Oh, I'm just doing it for free for friends at the moment, even though I'm fully qualified after a 2-year course, or oh, I only charge minimal amounts of money and that type of thing as well." But just to kind of go off on a tangent in that, what I find is that people, when you actually charge for something, value what you give and give it more weight as well. If I was to, give everyone a $2 sample of oil compared to if I said, here's a little bottle, but it is worth $200, think about the different relationship people would be. So I actually find, when it comes to charging people for things, it's actually part of the healing process to make sure that they give it the weight that it's worth as well. Would you agree?
Yeah, I definitely would. And I had a thought there and it's gone completely out of my head then. Oh, yes, no, I know what I was going to say. Yes, and I do think in a way, going back to aromatherapy, but also in terms of healing modalities generally, it's a necessary evil that the training is set up in a way that kind of derails you. So when you first start training in aromatherapy, but in also like reflexology and all and massage, what you have to do is give away treatments to do your case histories. And so it's quite a sort of step for people to suddenly go, oh, you were getting that for like free, but now I need 45 quid for it. And it is a really sort of, those first 2 years are really, really difficult. But I think, yeah, that's one of the things that I used to teach my students, was that if you give somebody a pot of cream, they might use it. If you charge them for it, they will go, I've spent the money on that, I think I definitely should be using it then. And you tend to see better results with your home treatments if they have been charged, because they don't forget that money's come out their purse, although they might do now they use a card. I mean, you physically had to get money out of the car, out of your purse back in the day. But I think, yeah, if you've invested in something, you put an investment in actually using it as well.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Couldn't agree more. So working with Cumin now on an energetic level, where would you place this one on the chakra system?
Lower chakras. Kind of, it's got a very earthy kind of note too, hasn't it? It's very grounding, feels safe. But then I do think, like, I don't think I would necessarily have it as in an aphrodisiac blend, but I think that it is kind of sexy. So I think we'd be going sort of base, sacral, and definitely solar plexus, because that's where your healing medicine is.
Yeah, for me, I kind of position it on the solar plexus. I think because it does, yeah, I can definitely see how it would for the lower chakras for that grounding effect. But I feel that it's almost more empowering than it is simply just grounding in that way. So I feel it really works well with that sun energy. It just has a yellow energy to me, hence why I dressed yellow today.
Yes, I didn't do the whole color thing today. I just was like, didn't feel it at all. But and because when I smell it, it smells pinky red to me. But I agree, it is yellowy orange, and when you even look at the spice, it does. But yeah, solar plexus. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Astrologically, where would you place it?
So I've gone backwards and forwards over this for several days because I knew you were going to test me, and I didn't come out with a suitable answer. But I am going to say Pluto.
Okay. Tell us why.
I do think, well, so mainly because one of the main uses for it outside of perfumes and food in Rome and Greece was it was a mummification thing. So anything to do with mummification is death mysteries. But I just really think about how it spoke to my dad, and he was really at death's door, and it got through, and nothing else was getting through. My dad, I always say my dad died long before he died to me. He's being ill was far more traumatic to me, because his whole personality was consumed by the illness. Nothing could get through, but that oil did, or
Amazing.
that spice did. Yeah.
I'm going to go further out than you have. Yes, it could. You could put an argument that it's got a bit of a solar energy to it. But one thing that you and I have both been kind of quietly getting into, and we maybe have some courses coming up in later time than that, but we've been getting into the dwarf planets. So they're
Mm.
starting to realize that beyond, we know that poor old Pluto, is it a planet? Is it a dwarf planet? What is it? Type of thing. It's been demoted. But as our technology has got better, they're actually finding out in the far depths of our solar system, there's many other bodies that are also named, that are also kind of the size of Pluto or a little bit smaller as well. And what I love about these is as they're being identified, they started being identified after the year 2000, which is quite synchronistic in itself. But they're actually naming not all of them after the Greek or the Roman gods, like we're used to most of the traditional astrology, but they're actually being named after all really interesting deities from cultures all around the world. And we're not just talking about the big ones like the Egyptians or the Nordic or the Hindu. There's actually, from like Inuit gods and I'm trying to remember I think it's called the Tongva tribe in California. There's a dwarf planet called Quawa. But there's another one called Makemake, which is spelled Make And Makemake is very much to do with fair distribution of resources and making sure that everything is fair and balanced in the world. And I kind of find that Makemake is really much has that kind of energy of cumin again, and that balancing, harmonizing, and making sure that you can bring abundance into your life, but it's got to be in a fair and equal way rather than a selfish way as well. So anyone who likes a bit of astrology, I find this is really interesting. They're debating, and astronomers and astrologers and individuals will debate what's truly a dwarf planet, what's not. But at the end of the day, what we're looking at is these rocks of influence, and the dwarf planets are very much about awareness of this kind of new level of consciousness, like being in tune with nature, being in tune with the feelings of the community and things that maybe we didn't think about in the past. But as we kind of come into this age of Aquarius, they bring new lessons into them. So I find them really, really interesting. So stay tuned, or even go on your own little journey in looking at the dwarf planets and the astrology. There's a really great gentleman by the name of Alan Clay, I may have mentioned him before, who runs something called Dwarf Planet University. He's got a great book as well, but I've been doing his course, so it's really interesting, just this idea of this new level of consciousness that brings out, new discoveries and new steps of evolution on our spiritual quest by exploring what the placement and the movement of these dwarf planets. So Makemake for Cumin for me.
Well, I can't follow that. You are excellent today. Right, well, I'm going to go away and read my notes on Makemake again. I do get what you're saying about the distribution of wealth. I'm going to have a tune in and see how that sits with me from a vibratory point of view. As if I didn't have enough work to do. I like it. I like it. Excellent.
Yeah. And the final question I always like to ask you, as an aromatherapist and as just a collector, do you think that we need cumin?
So I've decided that this is a daft question in the way that we've done our oils. I think it would have made sense if we'd done it right from the beginning. But now, because we're using pretty much all unusual oils, the nature of my answer is always going to be no, you don't need that one. Like if you, of course, you need lavender. But I think if you are interested in developing products, then it's one that you should definitely get to be able to get nuance into your blends. It's very sophisticated, and so if you play with it well, then you will get fascinating blends and sort of more depth and perspective than you would otherwise. I think if you've got diabetes. I think I would definitely be stockpiling a set of diabetes oils if that were me. Then yes, I will say that when I went through menopause and my skin just went white. I mean, I thought I was pale before, but my God, it's very good for kind of bringing the rosiness back into your skin. So if you've got if you have been ill or if you've got long-term stress and your skin looks very worn out and kind of ashen, it's good for kind of bringing the redness back to the skin. So it's worthwhile for that. But I think as an overall oil to just everybody needs it. No, and I don't think there will be any more of those oils because I think we've exhausted them all at the beginning of the the series.
Yeah, you're probably right, actually. And I will kind of echo something you pointed out before about, if people are making their own products, that, yeah, normally when it comes to photosensitivity, we just think of the citrus oils. And if you get them on and you go out in the sun, you're more likely to burn. But cumin does come up. It's almost like all the citruses and cumin. Are there any other oils that you know of that have that photosensitivity point of view? I only know of the citruses and cumin.
Well, so first of all, let me clarify then. The reason that we have this very low dilution of 0.4% alleviates that problem with photosensitivity. So if you're using that low level, then you don't have to worry about it. I'm not very good at photosensitivity as a subject, but the one that always seems fascinating to me is angelica root. I have no understanding of why it's almost as if the root goes, don't take me out in the sunshine, that's but for the most part they are, I think, citruses.
Yeah, fair enough. Beautiful. Well, thank you very much for joining us for another episode of Fellowship in Essential Oils. We'll be back next week to discover and unpack another exotic essential oil. We hope you're enjoying these rarer oils as well, because obviously when you jump on YouTube or you jump on podcasts, you can find hours and hours and hours of discussion about lavender or peppermint or rosemary or so on. But maybe some of these lesser known oils, maybe we've brought out some new ways to work with them. So join us next week and find out what we're going to discover then. Until then, take care and blessed be.
Bye-bye.